But our campaign generally as a union is to start saying whether we can work with our members and work with the local authorities, work with employers to try and make work pay. There's a Conservative politician in government at the moment saying that we need to make work pay. We agree that work doesn't pay for too many people. We have different solutions perhaps to Ian Duncan-Smith. We think the only people that can make work pay is employers, and we think a society and a community and trade unions should work with employers to make sure they make work pay. And that's our general campaign, and we've been focusing on the kind of employers that are the biggest culprits at making sure that they keep their wages as low down as possible to maximise the amount of hidden wage subsidy that they get. And I think we want to talk about Amazon and other companies to the extent they do that. The reality is this, is that people talk about our welfare budget in the country has been exploding over the past few years, and that it has, something like £35 billion a year. But when you look at it, the vast majority of people relying on benefits are in work. And the reason that they're relying on benefits, tax credits or housing credits or council tax credits, is because wages by many employers have been held down to the level of the minimum wage. And the minimum wage is, what, £6.50 now, £7.85 for the living wage. And the calculation made by Queen Mary's University in London says that for every person employed on a full-time week that's paid the minimum wage, in this hidden wage subsidy, that employer is getting around £3.50 per hour per worker in the amount of money that worker is then having to claim from benefits just to make ends meet. And we say that is a subsidy that some companies, and we allege Amazon and others, are deliberately and consciously relying on because they know their workers can make ends meet by relying on the state. And we think that's a huge subsidy that we need to hold these people to account. The other reason work doesn't pay, of course, is the number of people, certainly in the last 5 years, that have been forced into taking what we call MAC jobs. The jobs that McDonald's kind of invented, 0 hours contracts, split shifts, sent home because they're not too busy kind of work over the past few years. It's quite interesting the numbers of people we think are affected by those type of jobs. The government's own figures published last March say they confirm there's 1.3 million people on 0 hours contracts in the UK at the moment. They then say they're concerned about another 1.4 million people who may be on 0 hours contracts. We then add to that, what we know is another problem, is what we call people on minimal hours contracts, and companies like Next, and to some extent Amazon, because 0 hours contracts have become a bit toxic and a bit negative in the press, they've said to people, okay, you're not on a 0 hours contract anymore, we'll give you a contract for work for 5 hours a week. So now, therefore, you're now on 5 hours a week, so you have a guaranteed number of hours of 5 a week to work on. From a worker's point of view, and there may very well be people in this room that are affected, it amounts to the same thing. Whether you're on a 0 hours contract or a 5 hour week contract, you don't know what your earnings next week are going to be. You haven't got flexible gas bills or flexible landlords or flexible checkouts at Asda, but you have got flexible wages. You can't plan your life. So we think it's about an equal number as the 2.7 million on minimal hours contracts. If you add to that the bogus self-employed workers, we think about 1 million. We all saw over Christmas the drivers in City Split who used to be drivers working for a delivery company and then got told, you're now self-employed. You're now driving a van. You're not allowed to work for anyone else. You have to drive a van with our logo on, so you're only allowed to take our work, but you're self-employed, because therefore you won't get any holiday pay and you won't get any sick pay. And we found that they were just thrown out without redundancy pay. We think there's another 1 million people working on what we call bogus, false self-employment. And then there's another 1 million people working for agencies. There's a fantastic piece in actually the Guardian newspaper today about people's lived experiences working for agencies. So actually when politicians in the House get confused about why there's apparently all this growth happening in the economy and all these jobs being created but nobody's feeling it and nobody's applauding the government and nobody's cheering and leaping and dancing in the streets and all these allegedly jobs being created, the reason people aren't feeling any recovery, the reason for most people there's no recovery, is the 8 million working people all of a sudden who are in this insecure work, up from around about 1.5 million 5 years ago. It's a massive explosion of insecurity in people's lives and insecurity in people's earnings. And lo and behold, there's a huge crossover, of course, between the companies that build their businesses around that model and the companies that build their businesses around the hidden wage subsidy. And of course Amazon works exactly in that position. So that is part of our general campaign. The other thing that transpires, we've discovered, of course, quite obviously, we have a big problem. A lot of companies, not just Amazon, a lot of companies have got a very creative approach to their tax affairs at the moment. And we also discover, of course, companies that we would call wage dodgers, people that take that subsidy, keep wages low, keep people in permanent poverty, force people to work for their own poverty, tend also to be the companies that have the most creative way of avoiding taxes. I think it's as simple as this. It's the kind of corporate accountant lawyer you employ that says you can avoid paying taxes. It's exactly the sort of person that says keep your wages down to the minimum wage and they'll claim benefits. It's the same kind of thing. So tax dodgers tend to be wage dodgers, and we know we've got a bigger problem in the economy than Amazon. You've got Nets, you've got Starbucks, you've got Vodafone, you've got Boots, you've got Lloyds. Lloyds is interesting, we bailed them out with public money, and then now this big offshore themselves refuse to pay taxes. It's a fascinating world that we're creating, isn't it, where we do that. Many companies are doing this, but the key issue is this. Amazon, because of using previously the Dublin loophole and now the Luxembourg loophole, which is a little bit under threat, they pay tax at 0.5 pence in the pound. Their tax bill that they are avoiding is in the region of £4 billion over the last 10 years. We're not talking small cheese. If you look at the size of the deficit and what you're berated by every night when you look at the news and the amount of the deficit and what we need to do to cut the deficit, we need to close your libraries, and we need to close, we need to do all these things. Actually, do you know what? In another world, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it would have been bizarre for a company not to pay its taxes. And when you get the budget next week, and George Osborne talked about, we've been in great advancement supporting business in the UK. We've cut corporation tax from 21p in the pound to 20p in the pound. Everyone applauds. Tell me which business is paying it. Tell me which business is paying it. The only people that are paying it is the poor, struggling bookshop on your high street. We can't sell books anymore because a business that's about to plant a huge warehouse in Stevington is paying half a p in the pound and tearing them apart. So we've got something very strange going on. So we talk about Amazon today because it turns out Amazon, we've been looking nationally at a campaign of where they are approaching and where we've got Amazon sites already. We're talking to councillors in every part of the country. I'm kind of on the road really, so I'm sure you'll have further meetings in this area of Amazon, and we will support you nationally as much as we can. But I'm going to be in Southampton and Bradford and in Doncaster and in Merseyside, having similar discussions with communities around what it is that Amazon is bringing. If it follows a similar model elsewhere, that's around about 1,000 jobs. About 30 to 50 of which will be full-time permanent. They'll be managers. The rest will be casual or insecure in one form or another, whether that's minimum hours contracts, zero hours contracts, bogus self-employment agents, whatever combination that will be. We think that they're going to pay around about £7.65 an hour based on models elsewhere. The key thing is this in terms of the jobs, first of all, because for years, and I think it's fair criticism of this council, as it is other councils I've spoken to, for years and years and years, councillors all around the country have, when an employer or a big developer comes in and says, well, this will bring jobs to the area, they've said, fantastic jobs, that's what people want, without ever asking the fundamental question, what type of jobs? Are these subsidised jobs? Are these jobs that people can build a life on and make a living out of? And I think that hasn't happened here. There's only about 1,000 people out of work in this area. It's a fairly tight labour market. About half of them have been out of work for 12 months or more, and that they must be supported in a community to get back into work. But what's interesting is this, take those 1,000 jobs, if things work similar here as they have done elsewhere, between 3,500 and 5,000 people, actual real people, your neighbours each year, will fill those 1,000 jobs. These aren't 1,000 jobs that will be advertised in the newspapers and somebody get those jobs, and that's 1,000 jobs and they're fine and they'll be able to save and get a mortgage and a deposit and all the rest of it. No, that's not what life is like in Amazon. The experience of Swansea and Milton Keynes and elsewhere is that too many of their workforce get actually trapped in a revolving door of in-work benefits and out-of-work benefits. And they spend their lives trapped in that. Because what they find is, what our members tell us in this document, is if you are working in a depot that size, with this computerized generated thing on your wrist that gives you instructions of where you go next, you're going to be moving around about 10 miles per shift. 10 miles per shift. 71% of the people our member service said it's around about 10 miles a shift. And even, frankly, our members in their early, mid-20s are telling us, after 3 or 4 months of that, 6 days a week, it's pretty tough going. We've got lots of people who get these jobs in their 40s and 50s who just say we cannot do it anymore. We have then got a situation of massively distressing targets for people. So machines on the wrist tell you where to go next. You can be dealing with an order that says, for example, I need a CD, I need a book, and I need a toaster. But the CD's over there, the book's over there, the toaster's over there, you've got 5 minutes. I don't know if anyone remembers the Challenge Annika programme some years ago. It strikes me that's exactly what this is like, and it literally cannot be done. And the management tactic is, there is an unending pool of people out there that will take these jobs. If you don't like it, you will go, and consistently people find, even if they want to stay, After 3 months to 4 months, they find all of a sudden they failed their targets and they're out. And then they'll get a call back in about 3 or 4 months later saying, would you like to try again? And this is how people then get trapped in that. So that's actually what it's like working for Amazon. And that's why people, even though effectively you do get sacked by Amazon for trying to join a union, there is a law that says you're protected from joining a union, but practically speaking, the fear of losing your job is very real. They are hostile and anti. Many briefings to staff about not joining a union. I commend now the absolute courage and bravery of our members around the country, hundreds of them who are members of the union, who want to stand up for themselves, despite that. Because in some parts of the country, even that kind of poor working practice and conditions is better than what they've faced many years on the dole. And anyone who's faced in those, growing up in those communities, leaving school into those communities, anyone wants to make sure they can start their life. That's all anyone actually wants to do. So that's the general experience. The other document we've brought you is an analysis the GMB's done on Amazon's business model. It's quite interesting. By all means use this, you can quote it if you need to quote on their tax affairs, their profit and loss accounts, and the fact that their shareholders are getting a bit upset in America because they don't seem to be making any money. It's quite interesting on that. But the only thing I'll just wrap up with before I hand back is that these jobs aren't very high quality. This is a business that claims not to be making a profit anywhere. It actually, as far as we can see, doesn't seem to be paying taxes anywhere. And I just turned 50 the other day. I grew up in the 70s. I thought the days of massive state subsidy to failing, unprofitable businesses went out in the 70s. We seem to be doing the same thing again. And it wouldn't be so bad if these were decent jobs. But we really have to ask ourselves, why are we supporting vast amounts of national council, of national taxpayers' money, both in tax dodging and in wage subsidy? And actually, when you look at the issue of Junction 10A, massive amount of local council taxpayers' money here, what are you subsidising? What is it going to do to your community to bring these kind of jobs in?